Hi there, I'm Don The Snake Prudhomme,
I'm Elana Scherr.
and we're here talking about my new book that Elana and I just put together.
Do you like it?
Do I like it? I love it. My Life Beyond the 1320.
Don, you're, a rather famous drag racer. A
Yeah.
couple of people might have heard of you.
Couple.
Yeah. Why'd you decide to write a book now?
Gosh, because I found the right person to do it.
Flatterer.
Cartech approached me about it, and I said, as long as we can get Elana to do it, I will do it, because I've worked with you so much in the past on other projects. I just thought you'd be perfect, and it's really, it's the main reason I did it.
I paid him to say that.
No, seriously, it really takes two people that really understand each other to do a book like this, because it took damn near 2 years to do the whole thing,
It did, and you've been a part of other books before. There are
Yes.
other books about you, but never a full biography like this one.
Never, no. For some reason, no one really asked me. They just wanted to know about speed and ET, and I went, well, I'm bored of talking about that. I want to talk about what it was like growing up as a kid and what drove me, to do what I did, because you have to have that. And I've known that, I've seen that in other athletes, Muhammad Ali, people like that, the way they came up through their childhood, who really sets the stage for when you're older. And I think my childhood really set the stage for me for being driven so much.
Yeah, in fact, when you talked to me about doing the book, you said, look, I don't want to do a numbers book. You said, I want to talk about racing, I want to talk about the cars, but don't ask me for every single ET and mile per hour and what the timing of the engine was set at. That's the kind of stuff Don Garlits is good at. You said, I want to write a book about what happened outside of the track and what happened that got me to the track.
Yeah, beyond the 1320, right? What happened, and I think that's exactly what I wanted to do, and that's exactly the way the book came out, but certainly there's a lot about racing in here. I mean, there's pages and pages about racing and Bob Brandt and the Blue Max and people I've raced and championships we've won. There's a lot of that, but the part that really inspired me or got me going was talking about my childhood and how I came up. Like, a lot of people don't know I'm dyslexic, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, even you didn't know you were dyslexic, because in the 50s, they didn't really call it that, right?
No, it was called stupid. Well, I'm sorry, but that's basically the way it was, and you'll see that in the book. But it all worked out, it really did. I think that if I could just find like one person that reads the book that gets something out of it, it'd be great.
And when we started working on the book, I'd come down to your shop. We'd,
Play with the dogs.
We'd play with the dogs. We'd go through photos, and I knew a little bit of what we might want to talk about, because, like you said, you and I have worked on articles. We've known each other for several years. I think like 10 years actually. Yeah. And so I knew that you didn't have a super easy childhood. You didn't grow up wealthy. You certainly don't have the gentleman racer sports car background that a lot of race car drivers nowadays have. You really worked up from nothing. And you also dealt with some interesting things along the way in discovering yourself.
Oh my gosh, yes, I sure did, yeah. Well, I mean, I've talked about my nationality. That was a huge part in my life, because as a young kid, my folks were from Louisiana, and the Creole part of Louisiana. So actually, I'm Creole. That's what I go by, is Creole. Not black, not white. I'm Creole. That's how I feel. And in Louisiana, it was accepted down there, but when they moved to California, it was called, give me the name.
Passing?
Passing.
Yeah.
Yes, it was called passing. I thought passing, that means you passed away. No, it's people that are passing for white, that are not, that has black in their background.
Yeah, so basically your parents came to California, and because Creole wasn't a thing in California, they sort of made a decision about how they wanted to present themselves. And it was a very racist time. And
very much so, yeah. And I think they were just trying to protect us kids, because we used to go to them, and I'd go to my parents and go, hey, this kid called me black. Am I black, Dad? No, you're not, son. You're French Creole, you know. You're from Louisiana, and that's what you are. And so I was taught that, but it wasn't a problem in my career. I mean, people treated me just like anybody else, you know, with respect, and I was,
and that's not true. That's in the book.
well, pretty much, you know, or else we got in a little fight or two about it, you know, and I was called names. But it was just part of growing up. It was the best years, though, I can say, in racing, in drag racing. You know, this car right behind us, the Black Prudhomme car, in Bruce Meyer's collection. That car and the Hawaiian car was like my two favorite cars to drive, and they both those cars have really set my career off to, God, you know, I ended up winning 4 world championships and a couple of championships as a car owner. So I've just, you know, I've set every record there is to set. As the first funny car driver to go over 250. I was the first this, first that. But I think what's more important to me was was my childhood and the way I came up through life.
Well, and as I was writing the stories from the interviews, I was like, oh, I'm writing a love story here, because you talk about meeting Lynn, who eventually becomes your wife, and you guys are still married, and she was incredibly helpful in doing this book. And you know, you guys met when you were very young, and you fell in love, and you know, you broke up and you got back together, and at the same time you were falling in love with this young sport of drag racing, and following drag racing as it developed all the way through from being really just something that kids were doing to being this incredible career where you could be have this empire and be a boss.
Yeah, who would ever guess, you know? But growing up, you know, I became a car painter, and I was a pretty damn good painter. Actually, I painted this car when it was brand new back in 1962-ish. I painted the car and painted several of the race cars. And to go from a car painter, which isn't a bad job to have, and I still like picking up a spray gun every now and then, to become world champion and so on, it was a pretty good. There's a lot of ups and downs in between those years to get to that point, but who would ever dreamed, you know?
Yeah, and we talk about a lot of all of the greatest hits. You know, we talk about the Shelby Super Snake. We talk about you getting to meet the other Ford racers like Mario Andretti and Dan Gurney. And we talk about the Hot Wheels days, of course,
Snake,
and
the
McEwen.
Mongoose, Tom McEwen.
And we talk about your relationships with the other racers, many of whom you became friends with as a kid and are still friends with today.
Yeah, that's what's so nice, you know. And even in the book here, like Mario's got a few quotes in here. You know, people like that I've been in contact with, and we stayed friends all these years, you know, and got to ride around the road course with Niki Lauda, you know, in 1976, and I got hooked on open wheel racing ever since then, you know, and I got to ride with Niki and got to know him pretty good, and followed his career up until the time he passed, you know. I mean, he was still a charger. He was still in racing, and I'm pretty much the same way. I mean, I'm still in racing. I'm still involved with John Force. We still have a car out there, Austin Prock, and driving the car, and so I'm still dabble in it. And
yeah, well, because you get bored now that you don't have a book to write.
Yeah.
One thing that was pretty funny is that, you know, I wanted to get some supporting interviews from people you raced with, and I was like, oh, well, you know, maybe Mario will have something to say. And, you know, it's all you have to do is send someone a note that's like, hey, I'm working on something with Don Prudhomme. Do you have time to talk? And the next thing I know, my phone's ringing. It's Mario Andretti, like, hey, I want to talk about Don. What do you want to know? How long do you want to talk?
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and there were a lot of stories where people remembered things that then kind of kicked off memories for you.
Yeah, there's people that have helped me a lot. I mentioned to you, well, it's in the book, of course, about Dan Gurney. Dan Gurney, I was working at a Keith Black shop, actually on this car, working at his shop, Gurney would come in and out of there picking up parts or doing stuff in his road racing days. And I kept bugging him about getting a ride in an Indy car. And so finally one day he turned to me and said, "Kid, if you want to do it bad enough, you'll find a way." And I went, I didn't like that answer. But God, he was so right. And it's in the book, and I talk about it, and it's so true in life. If you want something bad enough, you'll find a way to do it. And Gurney's the one that told me that, and it's so true.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty wild probably for people who are looking up to you as a hero to realize that you had heroes too, and that, there were guys where you're like, oh, that guy's too cool for me.
No, I've been fortunate. I grew up in the best times, I think, in racing, in motor racing, when the A.J. Foyts and the Andretti's and all those guys were racing, and the Gurneys and people like that. Those were names and people that were just real heroes of mine, and I just really loved it. I just happened to do straight line stuff, and Mario used to call me a squirt racer. So anyhow, it all worked out, and I just couldn't be happier with my career and still have good buddies like Roland Leong and still good buddies to hang out with.
To get your signed copy of Don Prudhomme, My Life Beyond the 1320, visit cartechbooks.com. We have a limited quantity of the signed editions available, priced at $42.95.